They were called the Watchers, beings of light, who were never meant to touch the soil of earth. Yet long ago, in an age lost to both memory and time, they descended, not to bring salvation, but to share secrets. Secrets that reshaped the fate of humankind. They taught metallurgy, enchantments, the motion of the stars, and the mysteries of heaven. But their teachings were not blessings, they were burdens too great for mortal hands. Their story was deemed too dangerous, too strange, and so it was buried, banned, erased. And yet, it returns. In 1947, hidden among the caves of Qumran, fragments of a forgotten book were found, pages that told of angels who sinned, of giants who ruled, and of a flood sent to wash it all away. That book was Enoch, and just 2 years earlier, in 1945, another farmer near the Nile had uncovered a buried library, the Nag Hammadi Codices, where Gnostic Gospels whispered truths the early church tried to silence. This is not just mythology. It is history, discovered in dust and ash. And tonight, beneath the hush of twilight, you are invited to remember it. So, close your eyes now. Breathe slowly. Let the weight of the world slip from your shoulders. There is nothing to do, nowhere to be, only the story, unfolding like parchment under ancient stars. The Watchers are waiting. Their secrets drift in the dark, just beyond the veil. And you, yes, you have come seeking. Before we begin this sacred journey into the hidden past, take a moment to support this channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let us know in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. And if this mystery awakens something within you, share the video with someone who still believes in lost truths. Let's begin. Long before the stones of cities were stacked and the names of kings etched in clay, there was a mountain that watched in silence. Its name was Hermon, and it stood sentinel over lands that had not yet tasted the bitterness of war nor the burden of empire. On a night veiled in shadow, when the heavens held their breath and the earth lay still beneath the stars, something stirred above the peak. From the vault of heaven, figures descended, brilliant, radiant, and trembling with purpose. They were the Watchers, 200 in number, not cast down in anger but choosing to come. Their leader, a being called Semjaza, was mighty among them, but even he feared the vow they were about to make. The Watchers were not demons. They were not yet fallen. They were sentinels of the skies, watchers over men. But they looked upon the daughters of earth and found them beautiful. Desire took root, not like a wildfire, but like a vine creeping quietly along the edges of a sacred temple. And so, they swore an oath, one by one. Upon the summit of Mount Hermon, a pact sealed with trembling voices and defiant hearts. "Let us descend," they said, "and take wives from among the children of men." Each knew the cost. Each knew the law they would break. Yet still, they came. Their descent was not like a star falling. It was slower, softer, cloaked in moonlight and mystery. They stepped across the veil, exchanging the harmony of the heavens for the heavy breath of earth's wind. No trumpet sounded. No lightning split the skies. And yet, the world would never be the same. They did not come with swords or commands. They came with knowledge, forbidden, shining, dangerous knowledge. They came not to conquer, but to teach. In the days that followed, the Watchers moved among mankind not as conquerors, but as guides. They wore human likeness, and the people, unaware of heaven's laws, welcomed them with open arms. The Watchers taught the secrets of metal, the shaping of blades and shields, the forging of plows and idols. Azazel, one of their number, taught the art of warfare and ornamentation, how to paint the face and shape the eye with coal. Others taught enchantments, the reading of signs, and the naming of stars. For the first time, humanity looked up and began to chart the heavens, not as worshippers, but as those who would master them. It is written in the book of Enoch, a text lost to time and yet found in the scrolls of Qumran, that these teachings brought not light but shadow. The hearts of men were stirred to ambition. Kings rose with blood on their hands. Women bore children unlike any seen before giants. Hybrids, beings of immense strength and hunger, the Nephilim. They were called. Their footprints were left in the mud of ancient valleys. Their bones, it is said, lie beneath forgotten hills. The earth groaned beneath their weight, and the heavens wept. But we are not yet there. Tonight, we linger at the beginning, at the moment when the Watchers stepped beyond the boundary drawn by the divine. The Nag Hammadi texts would later whisper of other realms, other truths the world had buried. Gnostic gospels spoke of light imprisoned in matter, of divine sparks scattered through creation. It is no accident these echoes appear across texts found in caves and jars, hidden away as if the earth itself conspired to preserve what the world would destroy. As you rest now, feel the hush that falls over the mountain. Imagine the eyes of angels scanning the landscape, searching not for thrones, but for understanding. The stars are above, ancient and unchanged. Yet something within them mourns, for the Watchers are no longer watching, they are walking. They are teaching, and they are falling. The descent has begun, and you, dear listener, are walking beside them. Chapter 2. Secrets in the dust. In the wake of the Watchers' descent, the earth did not tremble, nor did the sky split open in rage. Instead, silence grew, the kind of silence that follows a deep breath before revelation. The Watchers moved among the people, cloaked not in fire or judgment, but in beauty and brilliance. And the humans, unaware of the law that had been broken, welcomed them as gods, not with temples, not yet but with wonder, curiosity, and the desire to learn. It began with whispers around fires. The Watchers would sit among shepherds and craftsmen, speaking of metals that slept in the bones of the earth. They taught how to draw copper from stone, how to smelt and shape it, how to build the first tools of war and wonder. Azazel, most daring among them, revealed the sharpening of blades, the forging of armor, the secrets of ornament and seduction. Women were shown how to adorn themselves, how to paint the face and twist the hair. Vanity, once unknown, crept quietly into the hearts of many, and with it, power began to shift. There was no warning, no decree from the heavens. The knowledge spread like wind across dry fields unseen. Unstoppable, Amazarach taught the art of enchantment, the speaking of incantations that danced between breath and spirit. Barakel revealed the courses of stars, and mankind looked upward not just in reverence, but calculation. The movements of light across the night were now patterns, equations, portents. Man began to predict the rains, the seasons, the eclipses, and in doing so, he felt powerful. The knowledge was intoxicating, but not all who learned were ready to wield such truth. In the book of Enoch, buried for centuries and rediscovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Watchers' gifts are not celebrated, they are mourned. For with each gift came imbalance. Swords led to blood, Stars led to pride. Spells led to control. Knowledge, once divine, now lay in the dust, clutched by hands too eager and hearts too frail. The earth began to groan beneath the weight of newfound power. What had been harmony tilted into disorder. And still, the watchers continued. They walked among cities as kings' advisors, among villages as healers and sages. Their glow was subtle, not blinding. To many, they were simply wise men from the high places. Yet to those who truly looked, there was something otherworldly in their silence, something eternal in their eyes. Children would stare too long. Animals would retreat in fear. The air around them shimmered just enough to unsettle. They did not age. They did not tire. They did not belong. In the ancient myths of Greece, we hear of gods descending to earth, of demigods born of divine and mortal union. In Sumerian, clay tablets, tales of those from the sky bestowing secrets upon mankind echo faintly through the dust. The Watcher's tale, though buried, lives in these shadows. Their story is the root, the older truth beneath the myths. And as the teachings deepened, as knowledge grew unchecked, something darker began to awaken. With every forge lit in the name of progress, with every charm whispered into the night, the bond between heaven and earth grew strained. The Watchers had not merely taught, they had trespassed. And with their trespass came consequences that would echo for generations. The Nephilim, those born of the union between Watchers and women, began to walk the land, towering, hungry, and brilliant. They too carried knowledge, but without the wisdom to wield it well. And so the corruption grew. Gnostic gospels later uncovered near Nag Hammadi would speak of hidden knowledge, of light imprisoned in flesh, of secret wisdom passed in silence. The early church declared such texts heretical. Yet they contained remnants of the same story, the danger of unguarded truth. Athanasius' letter in 367 AD condemned non-canonical books, attempting to silence stories like that of Enoch forever. But the earth kept secrets better than men did. Caves and jars held what could not be burned. And now, those words have returned. Tonight, let your breath slow. Let the dust settle in your mind. Picture the flicker of a torchlight over carved stone, the scent of iron in the air, the murmur of ancient tongues speaking truths never meant for mortal ears. You are among them now, listening as they did, learning like they did. But you are not bound to fall. For while knowledge can wound, it can also heal, if carried gently, with reverence, with humility. It becomes not a weapon, but a flame. And so you sit, quiet, still, with secrets swirling around you like dust in a beam of morning sun. The Watchers have spoken. But what will you do with what you've heard? The stories of the Watchers spread across the valleys and hills, passed from mouth to mouth like wind through tall grass. But not all who heard were blind to the danger. There were some few in number, quiet in voice, who saw what others could not. They beheld the growing fire beneath the surface of this new knowledge. They watched the eyes of men sharpen with greed, the hands of kings grow bloodied with ambition, and the hearts of children forget the stillness of the stars. One among them would rise to speak what others feared to say. His name was Enoch. Enoch was no warrior, no priest. He was a scribe, a walker of silence, a man whose eyes were opened not by angels of flame, but by the quiet grief of a world changing too fast. He watched the Watchers. He saw the sorrow hidden behind their shining gaze. For though they had taught humanity great things, they too had become trapped in their descent. Their light dimmed, their joy withered. What they offered had chained them. And Enoch, with his pen and parchment, began to write. He wrote not for kings or temples, but for time itself. His words were not declarations but laments. He recorded the names of the watchers, their teachings, their oaths, their fall. He wrote of the Nephilim and their insatiable hunger, of the way the land cried beneath their weight, of the blood that flowed like rivers between once brotherly tribes. He wrote of heaven's judgment and mercy, of voices that whispered to him in dreams, of visions that tore the sky apart and showed him what lay beyond. The Book of Enoch was born not as a weapon, but as a warning. This book would one day vanish from sight, but not from truth. Revered in ancient Israel, known and quoted by the early Christians, it would eventually be cast aside. When the Church began to crystallize its canon, its list of permitted words and silenced scrolls, Enoch was judged too dangerous, too strange, too revealing. And so it was buried, hidden, lost. Athanasius of Alexandria, in his Trecenta Sessanta Set AD Festal letter, listed the sacred books, drawing a firm line between light and shadow. Enoch was placed on the other side, heretical, forbidden, and yet it lived. In the highlands of Ethiopia, far from Rome and Constantinople, the book was preserved. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, older than empires, kept the words of Enoch as sacred scripture. They read aloud the tale of the watchers, the descent, the judgment. They never forgot. While the West silenced the voice of the scribe, the East held it close, like a flame in the hollow of the hand. When European scholars first read the Ge'ez manuscripts, they were stunned. Enoch had returned. Then came the desert winds. In 1947, a shepherd boy tossed a stone into a cave near Qumran. It struck a jar, which shattered, revealing scrolls wrapped in linen. Among them were fragments of Enoch, proof that the book had been read, copied, and cherished by the Essenes, a sect that dwelled in waiting for divine renewal. The Dead Sea Scrolls whispered what the world had tried to forget. Enoch was not a fringe myth. He had been central, sacred, sung in prayers beneath desert stars. And 2 years earlier, in 1945, in Nag Hammadi near the Nile, another discovery shook the world. 13 leather-bound codices, hidden in an earthen jar, buried by hands that feared the fire of Rome, revealed gospels the Church had long condemned. Among them, texts that echoed Enoch's tale of light hidden in darkness, of secret knowledge passed from beyond, of divine truth imprisoned in flesh. The Gospel of Thomas, the Apocalypse of Adam, these were not fables. They were memories. The suppression was not accidental. Early church fathers like Irenaeus, in his Against Heresies, fought to extinguish voices that strayed from the growing orthodoxy. Clement of Alexandria once quoted the Apocalypse of Peter, another banned book that spoke of visions and judgment. But even he would vanish beneath the rising tide of Rome's authority. The Muratorian Fragment, a list of accepted scriptures from the 2nd century, mentioned some of these now lost books only to dismiss them. Still, the story lived, in the soil, in the stars, and in you who now lie in stillness. Hearing these words in the hush of night, are not merely a listener. You are a remembering. Within your soul is the echo of old truths, of nights when firelight flickered over scrolls inked by trembling hands, of voices that dared to speak what others only dreamed. You walk in Enoch's shadow, You carry the burden of knowledge not for power, but for peace. Let your breath slow again. Feel the weight of silence pressing gently around you. Picture Enoch beneath the sky, parchment across his lap, a single lamp burning beside him. He writes, not with pride, but with sorrow. And yet in his sorrow, there is hope. For though the watchers fell, and the world burned, and the book was buried, still it was not lost. You have found it now, and in the finding, a light is lit. The watchers taught, the world trembled. Enoch wrote, and now, you remember, in the days when the watchers walked freely upon the earth, there came a stillness before the storm, a hush in the heavens, a quiet trembling in the soil. For what began as teaching, as a silent pact sealed upon Mount Hermon, was about to bear fruit. The sons of heaven had given knowledge to the children of earth, but now they gave more. They gave themselves. And in return, they took, the book of Enoch tells us plainly, the watchers, captivated by the beauty of mortal women, took them as wives. They did not ask permission of heaven, nor seek guidance from the Most High. They followed the desire that burned in their radiant forms, a desire not born of lust alone, but of longing to be near, to be known, to belong. And so, these celestial beings laid aside their glory, stepped deeper into the dust, and wrapped themselves in the warmth of flesh. The daughters of men were gentle and curious. They saw in the watchers an otherworldly glow, a presence that stirred dreams and softened fear. Their voices were like low winds through cedar trees, their eyes like the morning star reflected in still water. The women, drawn by something deeper than sight, welcomed them, in the fields and caves, by rivers and groves. Unions were formed. Love, or something like it, grew between the divine and the mortal. And from these unions came a new kind of being, neither fully of heaven, nor entirely of earth. They were called the Nephilim. The Nephilim were not simply giants in stature, though their size was vast. They were giants in power, in presence, in hunger. The ground shook beneath their feet. Their voices carried for miles. They built and broke, ruled and raged. Men bowed before them, and the earth recoiled from them. In many ancient texts, these mighty ones are remembered not just in scripture, but in the myths of countless peoples. In Greece, the demigods. In Sumer, the Apkallu. In India, the Asuras. In every tale, echoes of the Nephilim linger, mighty offspring born of divine encounter and human womb. But what the world gained in marvel, it lost in balance. The Nephilim, born of unlawful union, carried a restlessness that could not be soothed. They were hungry not for food, but for dominion. They devoured knowledge, land, and power. They raised great cities, carved stone with ease, bent iron like reed, but their hearts, untethered from heaven and unfitted for earth, grew dark. They became tyrants, and soon the people began to cry out not to the watchers, who had become silent in shame, but to the heavens themselves. And the heavens heard. Yet the watchers could not undo what they had done. Their children were growing. Their wives, once cherished, now feared, and their own radiant forms had begun to dim. No longer messengers of light, they wandered in shadows of regret. They watched their sons raise towers that touched the clouds, watched men fight and die beneath their children's feet, and they knew too late that their desire had set the world ablaze. Among the few who still walked with reverence was Enoch. The scribe saw the daughters of men, once full of joy and laughter. Now weary with sorrow, he saw mothers bury their giant sons. Fathers flee from the cities their grandchildren had conquered. He recorded the grief of a world unraveling. In the verses of his book, he named the names of angels and their offspring, not as accusation, but as warning. The union of heaven and earth, when done in defiance, brought not peace but devastation. Still, the story was buried. Early church leaders, afraid of its implications, chose silence. The tale of angelic descent and forbidden love did not sit easily with doctrine. Yet fragments remained brief mentions in Genesis, in quiet allusions in Jude. Myths passed from elder to child in secret, and when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, those fragments became a voice. The Book of Giants, one of the scrolls, told more how the Nephilim turned on each other, how the world drowned in their violence. Truth hidden in dust, waiting to breathe again. As you rest now, think of the daughters of men not as temptresses, as some later writings would claim, but as human souls caught in a cosmic drama. They did not seek angels. They were chosen by them, and in that choosing, they bore both wonder and weight. Their names are lost, their stories silenced, but in the quiet, they remain. Let your breath deepen. Feel the distance between stars and soil dissolve. The watchers, once so sure, now tremble. The Nephilim, mighty and tragic. Rome and the earth, ancient and wise, remembers. You, too, remember, for within you lies both dust and spirit. And in that space, the story unfolds. They came like the wind before a storm, mighty and terrible, beautiful and wrathful, born of angels and women. The Nephilim walked the world not as sons, but as sovereigns. They carried in their limbs the strength of heaven and in their hearts the fury of earth. They were taller than men, stronger than beasts, and hungrier than kings. They rose quickly, too quickly, and the balance of the world began to tilt. Where once there were villages, now there stood cities carved in stone and fire. The Nephilim were builders. They raised pillars so vast that birds nested upon their tops. They carved stairways that disappeared into the clouds, etched their names into mountainsides, and stretched roads like ribbons across deserts. The work of generations was achieved in a single season. They ruled with a kind of radiant terror, their voices booming through halls of marble and blood. Men bowed before them. Women feared and adored them. They were worshipped as gods. But with power came pride, and with pride came corruption. The Nephilim knew no boundaries. They seized what they desired, devoured what they could not control, and laughed at the heavens they had never known. Their fathers, the Watchers, now hid in silence, shadows of their former brilliance. They watched helplessly as their children, untethered and wild, reshaped the world in their image. And the world, cracked and groaning, began to break. The Book of Enoch says that the Nephilim consumed not only the food of men, but men themselves. The fields could not feed them. The rivers dried beneath their thirst. They hunted animals to extinction and turned upon humanity when nature no longer yielded. The cries of the innocent rose into the sky like smoke. Blood ran in the streets of cities once sacred. The ancient order unraveled. And still, they built. They built ziggurats that defied gravity, temples etched with stars and serpents, palaces of obsidian and gold. Their architecture was not merely physical, it was symbolic. Each stone laid was a statement of defiance against the Most High. We are here, they seemed to say. We are mighty. We are not afraid. Legends from every corner of the earth recall these beings. In Mesopotamia, echoes of them live in tales of Gilgamesh. In Mesoamerica, among the towering pyramids, rumors speak of sky beings who taught men to build. In Egypt, the gods are remembered not just for ruling, but for teaching, measuring the stars, mastering the flood. And yet, behind the glory, the world darkened. Enoch wandered among the people during this time, unseen by some, avoided by others. He carried no sword, he built no tower, but he listened, he wrote, he recorded dreams and visions, warnings and tears. He wrote of what the Nephilim had become, monsters, not of form, but of heart. He spoke of judgment that would come, not in fire from the sky, but in water from the deep. For the heavens had heard the cries, and they had answered in silence. Judgment was stirring, but it moved slowly, as all ancient things do. The Nephilim did not fear it. They believed themselves immortal, untouchable, destined to reign forever. Their laughter echoed across the valleys, but their dreams began to shift. Nightmares took hold. They dreamt of drowning, of stars falling, of chains of light wrapping around their limbs. Their fathers, the Watchers, tried to intercede. Some pleaded with Enoch to speak to the Most High on their behalf. But the heavens had already decided. And still, the Nephilim grew. Some say they turned against one another. That brother fought brother. That empires fell not to mortals, but to their own. The Book of Giants, one of the buried scrolls found at Qumran, tells of a time when the Nephilim, plagued by visions and fear, sought prophets to interpret their dreams. They feared something they could not name. They feared the return of order. They feared the light. Enoch's warnings were clear. You were born of heaven and earth, and neither shall claim you. You will be cast down, and your names forgotten. Yet their names linger still. In stone, in legend, in bone beneath forgotten hills. Their reign ended, but their memory remains stamped upon the foundations of human history, whispered in the corners of ancient texts, hidden in plain sight. And what of us? We, who walk now among their ruins, feel their shadow still. Every monument too large, every tale of giants, every myth of sky beings. These are not fiction, but echoes. The rise of the Nephilim was not merely a moment, it was a warning. That power unmoored from purpose becomes destruction. That brilliance without humility becomes a curse. Let your breath slow. Close your eyes once more. Imagine those towering beings fading into the mist of memory, their stone cities sinking into sand, their voices lost to the wind. The stars above still shine, but their paths remember the grief below. And in this quiet, you sit with Enoch watching, remembering, recording. You are not just dreaming, you are remembering. While the world rumbled beneath the weight of giants and the Watchers faded into grief, one man walked differently. He did not raise temples nor wield forbidden blades. He did not bow to the Nephilim, nor tremble before their fury. He listened to the wind. He studied the stars not as rulers did, to harness them, but to understand their harmony. He wrote what he saw, and when he prayed, the silence responded. His name was Enoch, and he was unlike any who lived in his day. The scriptures tell us Enoch walked with God. But what does that mean? In a world where angels had fallen, and men had forgotten the sound of holiness? It means that in the midst of chaos, there was still one who listened, one who kept his heart open to heaven's whisper. though it was drowned beneath the thunder of giants and the cries of the oppressed. Enoch was not called because he was mighty, but because he was still enough to hear, still enough to weep, still enough to obey. The watchers saw him and marveled. In their descent, they had forgotten the light. But in Enoch, it remained. They came to him in secret, asking him to speak with the Most High on their behalf. Their voices trembled, not with pride now, but with desperation. "Will the Lord forgive us?" they asked. "Will he spare our children?" Enoch listened. And then he climbed the mountain. He entered into silence deeper than the sea. And what he saw there, few can bear to know. The book of Enoch records it in trembling lines. He was shown the hidden places of the heavens, the dwelling of the holy ones, the chambers of the winds, the storehouses of snow and fire. He beheld the tree of life and the mountain of the east. He saw the stars bound in their courses, and angels tending the lights like eternal gardens. And above all, he saw the face of judgment, not as a wrathful flame, but as sorrow deep as time. The Lord spoke to him not with thunder, but with truth. The watchers, he said, had known the law. They had stood in the presence of the Most High. They had looked upon the eternal flame, yet they had chosen the daughters of men. They had revealed secrets to mortals unready to bear them. They had corrupted the earth and brought ruin to what was once good. Their children, the Nephilim, were the fruit of that disobedience, and their time was coming to an end. "Do not plead for them," the voice told Enoch. "They must bear what they have sown." Toast, Enoch wept, not because the judgment was harsh, but because it was true. He descended the mountain with a heart heavy and eyes bright. The world had grown darker, yet his spirit glowed. For he carried not just warnings, but revelation. He wrote them on scrolls, preserved them in stone. His writings became maps for those who would seek the narrow path. He was no longer just a scribe. He had become a witness. In the traditions of the Ethiopian church, Enoch is honored not merely as prophet, but as the seventh from Adam, the bridge between the old world and the world to come. In the Book of Jubilees, his role is clear. He recorded the ways of the heavens, the motions of the moon and stars, the sacred order of time. He became a keeper of calendars, a guardian of rhythm in a world that had fallen out of sync. And when his days on earth were done, he did not die. He was taken. The heavens opened, the winds shifted, and he vanished. The Gnostic traditions would later remember such figures, those who passed through veils and returned bearing light. In the Gospel of Thomas and the writings found in Nag Hammadi, there are whispers of souls who awakened, who saw beyond the veil of flesh and remembered where they came from. Enoch was among the first, a man who, in the midst of corruption, chose stillness, a man who, surrounded by fallen ones, chose faith. As you lie here, eyes closed, let the image of Enoch settle over your thoughts, not as a figure of power, but of peace. Picture him walking among trees, listening to the rustle of leaves, marking the turning of stars with a finger lifted to the sky. He does not speak loudly. He does not command. But heaven listens when he whispers. The earth quiets when he kneels. And you, in your stillness, walk beside him. Perhaps that is why you are here tonight. Not to escape, but to remember. To be chosen, as Enoch was. Not for greatness, but for gentleness. Not for might, but for truth. In the quiet stillness that follows judgment, the soul longs for understanding, and so it was with Enoch. The world had become loud with cries of sorrow, and the cries of the earth had reached the ears of heaven. But now, Enoch was called away not by men, nor by watchers, but by the one who sees all. The stars had shifted. The time had come for the veil to be pulled back. He was taken not by chariot nor whirlwind, but by light pure and endless. The mountains fell away beneath him. The voices of earth faded like mist at dawn, and he rose into a realm of order so vast, so radiant, that even the sun would have bowed in silence. The heavens opened, and he beheld the secrets written before time. They were not whispered in riddles or wrapped in riddles, but made known through vision and presence. He was shown the courses of the stars, the paths of the moon, and the dance of time itself. In the first heaven, he saw clouds and winds, storehouses of snow and hail prepared for days of judgment. In the second, he heard the cries of fallen ones, bound in silence, their gaze cast downward in eternal regret. In the third, he saw paradise where trees bore fruit in every season, and rivers ran with healing light. The fourth heaven unveiled the celestial bodies, the sun with its chariot of fire, the moon wrapped in garments of pearl, and the stars moved by unseen hands in sacred rhythm. But it was the fifth heaven that broke him, for there he saw the watchers, those who had descended, those who had taught, those who had sinned. They stood not in fire, but in sorrow. Their eyes, once bright as dawn, were now dimmed with grief. They begged him to plead for them. Their voices, once thunderous, trembled like children lost in the dark. "We cannot lift our faces," they said. "We cannot sing. We are no longer welcome in the light." And Enoch, though mortal, wept for them. He continued upward. The sixth heaven revealed choirs of holy ones, radiant and without blemish, singing the harmonies of creation. They neither tired nor faltered. They measured the times, recorded the deeds of men, and preserved the balance of the cosmos. Enoch understood that the universe was not chaos, but a great song, and each star a note in the eternal melody. He saw angels tending the seasons, guarding nations, and watching over those who dreamed with hearts untainted. Then came the seventh heaven. There, all motion ceased, time paused, and light became a living breath. Thrones stood in endless array, and above them, a flame beyond fire. And in that flame was the presence, the source, the voice, the one beyond all names. Enoch did not speak. He did not dare, but his soul knelt, and in the silence, he understood what words could never carry. Truth is not a thing to possess. It is a light to walk in. The secrets of heaven were not formulas or incantations. They were patterns of being, rhythms of love, architecture of mercy and justice. Enoch saw that even judgment was wrapped in sorrow, and even sorrow carried the seed of healing. He was shown the watcher's fall not as a tale of wrath, but as the consequence of misaligned love glory poured into broken vessels, light refracted into shadows. He saw scrolls with the names of all who had ever lived, each life written not in ink, but in light. He saw the future of Earth, its floods, its empires, its silence, and still, beyond all the ruin, he saw hope, a time when wisdom would rise from the ruins, when truth would bloom in dry places, when what was forbidden would be made whole again, not through conquest, but through remembrance. The Zohar would later speak of such light, the Or Haganuz, the hidden light, kept from the first day of creation, reserved for the righteous. Enoch beheld this light. It did not blind. It healed. It spoke without voice. And in its warmth, he was no longer afraid. The secrets were not given as weapons. They were entrusted to him as a steward, a guardian of sacred memory. In the book of Raziel, long attributed to the angel who taught Adam, the idea persists that certain truths are too holy to pass through many hands. Only those who walk in stillness can receive them. Enoch had walked in stillness, and so he was shown the blueprints of heaven, the wheels within wheels, the gates of flame, the veils that separate realms, the names of angels forgotten by time. He was told of the flood to come, of the cleansing of earth, and of a covenant that would be written not on stone, but in the heart. He saw Noah, yet unborn, and heard the promise that light would never again be drowned. He saw nations rise and fall, temples built and burned, prophets silenced and songs rewritten. Yet in all of it, the melody endured. And you now listening in the hush between breaths are not far from these mysteries. For within you, too, is the capacity to remember. You do not need wings to ascend. You need only silence, only longing, only truth. The secrets of heaven are not locked behind gates of gold. They are whispered in the quiet. They are known in the stillness. They are found in the breath that trembles before prayer. Enoch returned. He came down from the brightness with steps no longer bound by time. He walked the earth as one who had seen beyond. And though he bore no crown, men turned to him, for in his gaze was something the world had forgotten: peace. The watchers trembled at his presence. The Nephilim feared his silence, and heaven smiled, for a bridge had been built between what was and what could be, between light and dust. And now, in the quiet of this night, you cross that bridge, not as a wanderer, but as a keeper of memory. You are not empty. You are not lost. The secrets are yours. If you listen, if you remember, if you rest, the silence that follows revelation is never empty. It holds the weight of choice, of turning, of consequence. Enoch had seen the heavens, had beheld the harmony of stars and the sorrow of fallen ones. He had looked upon the hidden light and touched the patterns behind the world. But now, he returned not to marvel, but to speak, for judgment had not only been seen, it had been written. When Enoch descended from the brightness, the land itself seemed to hush. The trees did not move. Though the wind passed, the birds ceased their song. Even the Nephilim, terrible and mighty, paused in their indulgence. Something had shifted. The watchers waited with trembling breath. Their children, grown bold and restless, watched the skies with unease. The air grew heavy, as if the earth knew what the stars had whispered. Enoch did not return to argue. He did not return to plead. He carried no scroll in his hands. For what he had been given was not written on parchment, but in fire across his soul. He spoke the judgment not as wrath, but as inevitability. The world had been corrupted. The balance had been broken. The seeds of chaos had bloomed into forests of ruin, and the time of reckoning was near. To the watchers, he said, "You, who were once holy, looked upon flesh and chose desire. You who held the knowledge of the heavens gave it to those unready to bear it. You broke the harmony. You defied the order. And now, you shall not return to your realm. You shall be bound in the valleys of the earth, beneath black stone, until the end of days." In woes, they fell upon their faces. Some tore their garments of light. Others wept with voices like thunder. But the decree was not Enoch's. It had been set in motion the moment they swore their pact upon Mount Hermon. Semjaza, once their leader, now trembled in silence. Azazel, who had taught the making of swords and the art of adornment, would be cast into the wilderness, buried beneath sharp stones, watched by angels who would not speak. Each would be judged according to their deeds. To the Nephilim, no words were given. Their judgment would be the flood. Enoch recorded all of this not to glorify the fall, but to preserve the truth. In the scrolls that would one day be hidden in caves, his words would remain. The judgment of the Watchers was not cruelty. It was the consequence of misused glory. And even in this, there was a strange mercy, for they were not destroyed. They were imprisoned, not forgotten, but restrained. For even in judgment, heaven remembers. In the traditions preserved in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Giants echoes this story. The mighty ones had dreams of fire and drowning. They sought interpretation, and it was given to them. Their end would come not from above, but from within. Their size could not save them. Their strength would falter. Their kingdoms would fall to silence. For the foundations they had laid were built on pride, and pride has no root in eternity. And yet, there is a sorrow in Enoch's writing, a gentleness that refuses to gloat. He writes of the judgment with tears between the lines. He does not delight in the fall of the mighty. He mourns the loss of what could have been. He walks among the ruins before they crumble. He sees the children playing in cities soon to be drowned. He listens to the Watchers' wives, singing lullabies to giants who will never grow old. He bears the burden of knowing. The Gospel of Judas, found centuries later in a desert jar, speaks of chosen ones who understand that sacrifice is not betrayal but fulfillment. Judas, in that Gospel, is portrayed not as villain, but as vessel. Likewise, Enoch, reviled by some, ignored by many, is the vessel of truth. He does not curse. He carries. He does not condemn. He warns, and his warnings, though buried for millennia, have returned. You lie here now, in the hush of the hour, not by accident. You are not merely listening to a story. You are touching a thread woven through the deepest tapestries of time. The judgment of the Watchers is not just a tale of ancient days. It is a reminder that all knowledge carries weight. That light misused can blind, and power without humility corrupts all it touches. And yet there is hope, for the story does not end in chains and floods. The scroll is not closed. Enoch would go on to see a vision of peace, of restoration, of a world made new. But first, the reckoning must come. First, the truth must be spoken. The judgment is written not in anger, but in clarity. It is a line drawn gently in the sand, and beyond it, something waits. Let your breath steady. Let the weight of these truths rest upon you not as fear, but as invitation. You are not a watcher. You are not a Nephilim. You are one who remembers, one who listens, one who walks in the quiet. The judgment is written, but so is mercy. When the words of judgment were set in motion, when the sentence was whispered from throne to star, the wheels of heaven began to turn, not with rage, but with resolution. The balance had tipped, and it would be restored not by storm or flood, not yet, but by presence, holy presence. And so, the archangels descended. They came not in haste, but in harmony, as instruments in the hand of the divine. Each one carried a purpose older than time, a role inscribed in the breath of creation. Their names were not unknown to men: Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Uriel, but men had forgotten their meaning. Now, they would remember. Michael descended first, the guardian of the covenant, clothed not in fire, but in silence that spoke of authority. He bore no sword in hand, for his word was the blade. Where he stepped, the ground remembered Eden. His presence was not wrath, but restoration. He had come to bind what was broken. Semjaza, once the chief of the Watchers, trembled before him. Once brilliant, now bowed. Once radiant, now ruined. Michael spoke only once. You knew. And that knowing was the chain. Raphael followed. The healer of nations. He walked among the valleys where giants slept, tracing light into the cracks of the earth. He was sent for Azazel, not to strike, but to contain, to bury what had corrupted the land. Beneath sharp stones in Dudael, a wilderness of wind and silence, Azazel would remain. Raphael's hands shaped the prison not out of vengeance, but to protect what remained of the innocent. Every stone sealed with sorrow. Gabriel came next. The messenger. He did not bring comfort this time, but clarity. He called forth the Nephilim, summoned their names into the wind. His voice moved through their dreams, waking terror and confusion. He was the trumpet before the fall, the voice that shattered illusion. The Nephilim, so sure of their dominion, now ran from shadows they could not name. Their pride unraveled, thread by thread, and Uriel, the light of God, came last. His arrival was as the rising sun over a drowned world. He held no weapon, for light itself was his sword. He stood over the earth and revealed its secrets. Nothing remained hidden. The Watchers, the Nephilim, the blood in the soil, the tears in the dust, all were seen. In his gaze, mountains melted, and lies fled. He revealed not only the sin, but the cost. He made visible the fractures in the soul of the world. The archangels did not strike with fury. They moved with the precision of stars, each fulfilling what had been written. Their descent was not a fall, but a return. They were sent not to destroy, but to restore order where chaos had taken root. And yet, in their coming, the world began to tremble. The Watchers, once so bold, now knelt, bound not by iron, but by truth. Their children fled into deserts, into caves, into the depths of the sea. But the heavens had seen them, and the earth would not forget. The Book of Enoch tells of their binding not merely beneath mountains, but beneath time itself. They would wait for the day of reckoning, when the veil would be lifted once more. Enoch watched all of this, not as a bystander, but as a witness. He stood beside Michael, walked behind Raphael, listened to Gabriel, and wept beneath Uriel's light. He recorded not only what he saw, but what he felt, the sorrow of the fallen, the cost of glory misused, the mercy hidden even in judgment. For the archangels did not laugh. They did not boast. They carried out their roles with solemnity. They mourned what had been lost. In later centuries, echoes of these angels would appear across cultures. Michael would become the warrior saint, Raphael, the healer guardian, Gabriel, the herald of prophecy, Uriel, the illuminator. But their first descent was not to raise, but to restrain. Their first coming was not to bless, but to bind. And now, as you breathe slowly in the silence of this hour, you can feel their nearness, not as fear, but as presence. The archangels still walk among the ruins. They still carry out their charge. For the battle between light and darkness is not yet finished. And you, dear listener, are not apart from it. Close your eyes and see them not with sight, but with memory. Feel the hush they bring, the weight of their wings, the clarity of their silence. They do not need to speak, for your soul remembers their names. You were made with the knowledge of them woven into your bones. Michael stands at your gate. Raphael traces healing across your breath. Gabriel speaks truth into your dreams. And Uriel lights your path through shadow. The archangels descend, not just then, but now. And in their wake, the world prepares for what must come next. Beneath the soil, the old roots whispered. In the deep places of the world, the waters stirred. Clouds gathered not with haste, but with intention, swelling in silence above a world that had forgotten how to look up. The wind shifted, and with it came a stillness too complete to be natural. Something ancient was awakening, not a new thing, but a memory rising from the bones of the earth. The flood was not a surprise. It had been coming since the first vow on Mount Hermon, and now it drew near. The watchers, bound in shadow, could feel it. Their prisons were not only beneath stone, but woven into time itself. Each moment was a drip of sorrow, each breath a reminder of what they had lost. The Nephilim, scattered and trembling, heard it in their dreams, a rhythm like a drum beneath the waves, a pulse that matched their fear. Their monuments stood defiant, but hollow. Their laughter had fled. And in the heavens, the divine silence was not absence. It was preparation. Enoch walked the earth in those days, his steps quiet, his gaze heavy with the weight of what he knew. He did not shout warnings. He did not call for repentance. He simply walked, recording the tremble of the trees, the muttering of rivers, the way animals moved without needing to be told. Creation knew. The stars knew. Only man remained uncertain. But not for long. Noah had been chosen not for greatness, but for obedience. He did not understand the fullness of the plan, only the next step. And that was enough. The Lord spoke to him in stillness. Build, and he obeyed, while others mocked, while giants watched with fading arrogance, while kings dismissed him as mad. He worked. Each plank of the ark was a prayer, each hammer blow an act of trust. He did not preach. He prepared. The Book of Enoch expands this moment, describing how the angels came to warn Noah, how he was told not only of rain, but of the tearing open of the deep places, the fountains beneath the world that would erupt in sorrow. It would not be a mere storm. It would be a return of chaos, a washing of what had been stained. The flood was not punishment alone. It was purification. The Dead Sea Scrolls echo these themes, hidden in fragments long buried. Among the ruins of Qumran, pieces of parchment whisper of waters that cleanse, of judgment wrapped in mercy. The flood, in these texts, is not the end. It is the reset, a return to stillness, to silence, to sacred rhythm. And in that rhythm, a remnant would be saved, not through strength, not through knowledge, but through listening. The Nephilim, sensing their end, became frantic. Some sought to flee into the mountains. Others tried to escape into the depths. Legends tell of giants buried in ice, trapped beneath sand, sleeping beneath oceans. Their echoes remain in the myths of every land of mighty beings swallowed by storms, of sky-born gods who fell in the days of deluge. The flood did not erase them entirely. It silenced them. And what of the watchers? They watched still, bound, silent, but not unseeing. They felt the water before it touched the ground. They heard the thunder before it cracked the sky. Their punishment was not merely to fall, but to watch what their fall had wrought. Their children would drown. Their temples would be swallowed. Their names would be forgotten by men and remembered only by stone. Enoch, before he was taken, left behind his writings, not only the Book of Enoch, but visions, prayers, prophecies. Some say he was shown the flood long before it came, that he wept not only for the world that was, but for the one that would be, a world rebuilt upon the bones of giants, upon the silence of stars who had once sung a different song. He knew the flood was mercy wearing the mask of ruin. In the Nag Hammadi texts, we find fragments of this sorrow, echoes of a time when divine knowledge was buried beneath the waters, when truth was hidden to preserve it from destruction. Gnostic writers spoke of eons and floods, of veils and remembrance. Their voices, like Enoch's, were silenced for a time, but the story endures. Tonight, as you breathe beneath a quiet sky, imagine the clouds gathering not in fear, but in renewal. The waters come not to erase, but to restore. The flood does not rage, it remembers. It remembers Eden. It remembers the song before the fall. It remembers the weight of disobedience and the promise of beginning again. You, too, are part of this cycle. The waters rise within you, not to destroy, but to cleanse, to carry away what no longer serves, to soften the hardened places of the heart. You do not build an ark of wood, but of listening, of faith, of stillness. Let it carry you. The flood approaches, and with it, the promise of peace. In the hush that followed the flood's approach, the world held its breath. Waters had not yet risen, but their coming was certain. A deep, soundless decree had already echoed through the vaults of the heavens. And beneath the earth, beneath the roots of trees and the footprints of giants, the watchers felt the binding begin not with chains of iron, but with time, silence, and the closing of doors that would not reopen. They had once been luminous sons of heaven, clothed in the wisdom of the stars. Their descent had not been a fall of fire, but of choice. Yet that choice, small and shining in its beginning, had cast a shadow long enough to darken an age. Now, the age was ending, and so the watchers were gathered, not by force, but by inevitability. Raphael, who had already laid Azazel beneath the jagged stones of Dudael, returned now with solemn eyes. He had no hatred, only duty. His hands were the hands of a healer. Yet tonight they closed over judgment. The watchers stood not in rebellion anymore, but in sorrow. They did not speak. Their voices had already echoed too far, caused too much. Silence was all they had left to offer. The Book of Enoch says they were bound in the valleys of the earth, dark places where no light could reach, where even the whispers of time grew still. There, the fallen ones would wait until the final day, when the great reckoning would arrive, not with flood, but with fire. But that time was far off. For now, their presence would be sealed, and the earth would begin to heal. Some were buried beneath rock. Others were entombed within caverns beneath deserts and seas. The deepest places welcomed them like wounds closing shut. Their names were etched, not in stone, but in memory: Semjaza, Azazel, Armarus, Barakel, and so many others. Names once sung in heaven, now pressed into silence beneath the soil. Their knowledge, once divine, was sealed with them. What had been taught in disobedience would not be taught again. And yet even in binding, there was mercy. The Most High did not unmake them. He did not cast them into nothingness. He let them remain. imprisoned, unseen, forgotten by men, but not by the stars. Their punishment was to endure, to wait, to watch as the world moved on without them, as kingdoms rose and fell, as men found faith again in the absence of fire. The Watchers were not destroyed. They were preserved as reminders. The traditions preserved in the Book of Jubilees speak of this long imprisonment, of how the children of the Watchers, those few Nephilim who survived, were hunted by their own, how they tore each other apart in confusion and madness, haunted by dreams of coming water, of coming silence. The giants fell, not in battle, but in despair, and the world, weary from their weight, began to rest again. Enoch recorded it all. He walked alone now, his work nearly complete. He did not fear the bound ones. He did not flee the ruins. He moved among the remains of cities, swallowed by sand, among stones once etched with glory, now cracked and forgotten. He wrote their names not in vengeance, but in remembrance. His scrolls carried both the story of the Watchers and the promise that all things, even judgment, are part of the divine pattern. In time, those scrolls would be hidden, some buried near the Dead Sea, others passed from hand to hand in the deserts of Ethiopia, and some lost entirely until the sands would shift and reveal them again. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were uncovered in 1947, fragments of the Book of Enoch breathed again. When the Nag Hammadi Library surfaced in 1945, the Gospel of Truth and the Apocalypse of Adam whispered of heavenly descent and hidden wisdom once more. The world had not forgotten. It had only slept. And now, so do you. Beneath your breath, a memory stirs not of who the Watchers were, but of what they represent. That knowledge is sacred. That desire without wisdom leads to chains. That even angels can fall. But also, that mercy watches even over the fallen. That silence can be healing. That judgment is not the end. Let your eyes close. Let the stillness return. The Watchers are bound. The storm is near. And you, beloved listener, rest beneath stars that have seen it all. You do not carry their burden, but you carry their story. And in the telling, something is made whole again. The wind had quieted. The giants had fallen. The Watchers were bound in valleys no man could reach. And the world, though trembling, had been given time to breathe again. But Enoch's journey was not yet complete. Though he had walked the breadth of a broken world and recorded its sorrow, there remained one more ascent, one final unveiling, for what had begun with a descent from heaven would end with a vision of what lies beyond. He was called again not by name, but by presence, not by trumpet, but by stillness so deep it opened like a door. Enoch, the scribe, the walker of silence, was taken once more, lifted beyond the skies he had already seen, beyond the realms of stars and winds, beyond the singing choirs and the prisons of the fallen. He was brought to a place beyond place, where time folded into itself, and all things became one. There, he saw the end and the beginning, woven together like light upon water. He saw generations yet unborn and ruins that had not yet risen. He saw the flood, the ark, the raven and the dove. He saw the tower that would scrape the heavens and crumble into confusion. He saw Abraham's footsteps through sand, Moses upon the mountain, David's harp in the twilight, and the weeping of prophets who could not be heard. He saw kingdoms rise, glittering and proud, only to fall into dust that forgot their names. But beyond all that, Enoch saw the Son of Man. He was not like the giants. He did not come with sword or fire. He came clothed in gentleness, and yet the stars bowed before him. He carried judgment not as a weapon, but as a flame that purified, His throne was like crystal, and from it flowed a river of mercy. All the souls of men were gathered before him, those who wept in silence, those who cried for justice, those who had walked alone but never without being seen. And the watchers? Enoch saw them, two still bound, still waiting, but now they trembled not with fear, but with awe. For the Son of Man had not come to destroy all things, but to make all things new. Enoch saw the book of life opened, and within it were not only the deeds of the righteous, but the tears of the forgotten. Nothing had been lost. Everything had been kept. He saw the light that had been hidden since the first day, the Or Haganus, the concealed brilliance reserved for those who remembered the song before the fall. And that light, once distant, now flowed into the world like morning after long night. It kissed the ruined altars. It warmed the bones of the faithful. It entered hearts cracked open by suffering and made them sing again. Enoch was shown the tree of life in its fullness, not guarded by flame now, but blooming in peace. Its fruit was for healing. Its roots touched every corner of the earth, and its leaves whispered the names of those who had walked in the shadow and kept faith. He saw a new heaven and a new earth, not replacing the old, but healing it from within. Time no longer chased itself. Death no longer held dominion. Light no longer hid. The Zohar would later speak of such things, of sparks of holiness trapped in shattered vessels, scattered across creation, waiting to be gathered by the righteous. Enoch saw them gathered, not by strength, not by law, but by love. The vision filled him, and he wept, not in sorrow, but in joy deeper than silence. He had seen the fall, he had seen the flood, and now he saw the future glorious, gentle, glowing like dawn. And then the vision closed. He returned not to the ground, but to the presence of God. The earth did not see him die. The scriptures say simply, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. He had become more than witness. He had become a bridge between dust and light, between sorrow and promise, between what was lost and what will be restored. You, now listening in the soft hush of your own night, have walked with him. You have traced the story from descent to redemption, from pride to peace. The visions are not only his, they are offered to you now in dreams, in silence, in the breath between words. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Enoch's path is not of giants and angels only. It is of listening, of remembering, of becoming still enough to see the truth behind the veil. His final vision was not the end of a story, but the beginning of yours. The wind shifted again. This time not through the trees of a garden nor over the waves of a rising flood, but through the scrolls of memory. Enoch was gone, taken, not buried. The waters had come and gone. The watchers were bound. The Nephilim silenced. And the ark had come to rest upon the high places. A new world stretched out before the children of promise. But something was missing. A silence crept in, not just the hush of aftermath, but a deliberate quieting. The story of the watchers, the wisdom of Enoch, and the memory of what had been, began to vanish. It did not vanish all at once. For a time, the book of Enoch was still held dear, revered by the ancient Hebrews, copied by scribes who trembled at its visions, read aloud in desert caves and sacred assemblies. The early Christians, too, remembered. The Epistle of Jude, one of the last letters before the close of the New Testament, quotes Enoch directly. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones. Enoch was a voice that could not be ignored. But then came the councils, The canon lists, the decisions carved into doctrine. As the early church fathers sought to define orthodoxy, the borders of sacred text narrowed. What lay outside those borders, no matter how ancient, no matter how cherished, was condemned. And so, Enoch was set aside. Athanasius of Alexandria, in his 367 AD festal letter, listed the books acceptable for the faithful. Enoch was not among them. It was declared apocryphal, heretical, too strange, too powerful. Why? Perhaps it spoke too clearly of angels and judgment. Perhaps its visions of heavenly order and ancient rebellion threatened the growing systems of earthly control. Perhaps the memory of divine beings choosing mortality was too dangerous to keep. The Watchers had fallen, but now their story would fall too, beneath the tide of sanctioned theology. And so the scrolls were hidden, buried in clay jars, wrapped in linen, concealed in caves near Qumran. They slept in silence, preserved by desert winds and sacred hands. Some were smuggled south, deep into the highlands of Ethiopia, where the Orthodox Church would never forget them. In Chayes, the ancient liturgical tongue, the Book of Enoch survived. While the West forgot, the East remembered. And then, after nearly 2,000 years, the earth gave up its memory. In 1945, in a place called Nag Hammadi, near the Nile, a farmer named Muhammad Ali uncovered a jar. Inside were codices, books, long buried, full of writings lost to time. Among them, the Gospel of Thomas, the Apocalypse of Adam, the secret book of John. Each one spoke in whispers of light and shadow, of knowledge passed through silence, of truths hidden from the rulers of the world. Though not Enoch in name, their breath carried his spirit. They spoke of watchers, of veils, of divine sparks scattered in flesh. They had been suppressed, and now they had returned. 2 years later, in 1947, the Qumran caves opened. The Dead Sea Scrolls surfaced like bones from the deep, and among them fragments of Enoch, ancient, sacred, still singing. The earth had kept what man tried to bury, but even then, the resistance remained. Scholars debated the texts, churches dismissed them, and still, Enoch spoke not in fire, but in persistence. The Book of Giants, found among the scrolls, gave even more. It told of the Nephilim's dreams, their fears, their knowledge that judgment would come. It spoke of angels warning their children, of secrets whispered in the dark. It confirmed what Enoch had always said. The story was never myth, it was memory. And so we ask, why were these things hidden? Why were they forbidden? Perhaps because they remind us that the world is not as simple as we would make it. That there were days when heaven touched earth not with thunder, but with grief. That knowledge can wound, that angels can fall, that the veil between realms is thinner than we care to admit. Perhaps because they whisper something even deeper, that the light we seek is already within us. And those who buried the scrolls knew this. They did not hide them to deceive, but to protect, to preserve a fire too sacred to cast before a world that had forgotten how to listen. But now you are listening. You lie beneath the same stars that watched the Watchers descend. You hear the breath of Enoch's visions echo in your quiet. You feel the return not of fear, but of memory. The forbidden texts are not weapons. They are mirrors. They show us what we were, what we are, and what we might yet become. So let the silence speak. Let the forgotten speak again. You are not alone in this. Remembering, the Book of Enoch was not the only voice buried in the silence of forgotten sands. Across the ancient world, Scrolls and fragments whispered similar truths of angels and light, of descent and revelation, of wisdom once shared and then hidden. Though Enoch's name may have faded from the lips of priests, his story echoed on. In other texts, other tongues, other tellings, the same song, hummed under different breath, awaited those who still had ears to hear. In the dust-wrapped codices discovered at Nag Hammadi in 1945, a new door was opened. Here were the Gospels of the secret keepers, the rejected, the quiet rebels of the Spirit, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip. And the Gospel of Truth did not speak of religion as hierarchy, but as knowing. Their language was not bound to ritual, but to awakening. And among them, one stood apart in mystery and controversy. The Gospel of Judas, long feared, long reviled. The Gospel of Judas does not depict betrayal in the way tradition tells it. Instead, Judas is shown as the one who knew, the one to whom the hidden mysteries were entrusted. It speaks of realms and rulers, of stars governed by unseen powers, of divine beings trapped in flesh and longing for return. It speaks of a savior revealing the secrets of the cosmos, not to be worshipped in stone, but remembered in spirit. And within its strange poetry, we hear an echo of the Watchers. For in this gospel, as in Enoch's vision, not all divine beings obeyed. Some defied the higher order, some passed their knowledge to mortals, and judgment came, not in wrath alone, but in revealing. It was not that they were evil, it was that they gave what was not yet meant to be received. And in that breach, the world was changed. The Apocalypse of Peter, quoted by Clement of Alexandria and mentioned in the Muratorian fragment, also tells of visions beyond the veil. It speaks of heavens and hells, of souls passing through realms, of a universe shaped by justice and mercy entwined. Though removed from the canon, it remained close to the early heart of Christianity. It showed that judgment was not about vengeance, but healing, that even the lost might be restored, and that what had been hidden would one day be revealed. These texts were not forbidden because they lied, but because they revealed too much. They offered not a simple faith, but a dangerous one, a faith that required inner vision, silence, and courage. A faith not built upon the walls of temples, but upon the doors of the soul. And always woven within them were echoes of Enoch's ancient tale. The fall of those who were once watchers, the knowledge given too soon, the promise of restoration yet to come. The Zohar, centuries later, would expand this thread. In its mystical Hebrew pages, we read of Or Haganuz, the hidden light of creation, stored away for the righteous. It speaks of angels, of vessels shattered and sparks scattered, waiting to be gathered again. It speaks of a world that fell not just through sin, but through imbalance. And that light, like Enoch's vision, must be remembered to be restored. In the book of Raziel, a medieval Jewish text said to have been given by an angel to Adam, the story deepens. Here, too, divine knowledge is handed down, secrets of creation, of stars, of healing. Once more, the theme returns that divine truths were passed to man in hidden ways. That knowledge must be kept and honored, not consumed in haste. And if Raziel gave his book to Adam, and Enoch received his vision from heaven, we see a pattern, a golden thread of remembrance passed down through the line of seekers. Across continents and centuries, the story remains. In Hindu texts, the Vedas speak of devas descending, of cosmic battles, of great cycles of time. In the myths of the Americas, Sky beings teach men to build, to farm, to heal. In Greek lore, the Titans are punished for defying divine order, and Prometheus is bound for bringing fire to mankind. And always there is light fallen into shadow, and a reckoning that follows. But the question is not whether these tales are literal. The question is why they all remember the same shape. The Watchers are not just angels. They are archetypes, symbols of what happens when the sacred is given without preparation, when power is received without humility. And Enoch is not just a scribe. He is the soul who listens when others speak too loud, the one who walks the quiet road and carries the story forward. You, too, are part of this lineage. In your silence now, as you lie beneath the hush of night, you are closer to these truths than you may know. The scrolls have spoken. The echoes have found you. You are no longer asleep. You are remembering. The forbidden texts were not destroyed. They were hidden for you. Let them speak again. There is a light older than the sun. It does not burn. It does not blind. It is the first light, the one spoken into being before the stars were set in their courses. The sages called it Orhaganus, the hidden light. It was not lost. It was veiled, reserved, preserved for those who would remember. And in the silence that followed the flood, after the Watchers had fallen and the scrolls were buried, that light still shimmered quietly, waiting. The Zohar speaks of it in whispers. It tells how this primordial radiance was concealed after the first day, hidden from a world not yet ready, but not removed. It lingers behind the veil, like sunlight behind clouds, like a flame beneath ash. It cannot be grasped with hands, only with spirit. And Enoch, in his final vision, had seen it, not as brightness, but as peace, not as glory, but as gentleness. It was the light that healed, not the light that judged. This light moved through all things. It flickered in the leaves of the tree of life. It echoed in the chambers of heaven. It hummed beneath the breath of prophets and hovered over the waters before the voice spoke. And even as the Watchers were bound and the world seemed dim, the hidden light did not fade. It withdrew not in fear, but in waiting. The mystics later taught that this light shattered into sparks when the world was formed. That vessels meant to contain it broke under its weight, and the divine radiance scattered across creation. These sparks fell into the dust, into the hearts of men, into stones, into stories. And the task of the righteous, the task of all who remember, is to gather the sparks, to lift them through acts of love, through words of truth, through silence held in reverence. You, who have listened this far, are one who gathers. Every truth you have remembered tonight, every sorrow you have honored, every mystery you have welcomed into your breath, it gathers light. You are not here by accident. The scrolls were preserved for a reason. The stories were whispered for this very hour. The Watchers fell because they gave too much without timing. But you, in this stillness, are receiving as it was meant to be received, gently, with awe. The book of Raziel, passed down from the angel to Adam, is said to contain the structure of all creation secrets of stars, herbs, healing, and divine names. It, too, was a vessel of light, not a weapon, but a mirror. And those who read it were not made powerful, but humble, for the more light one gathers, the more one sees how little they are, and how great is the one who gives. The hidden light is not something to chase. It comes when you are still. It rises like mist from memory. It lives in the spaces between words, in the hush after a question, in the pause between notes, In the breath you are taking now, it is the soft glow of mercy that wraps around a weary soul. The watchers sought to command knowledge, but the wise ones, like Enoch, received it, even in exile. The light was not gone, even in chains. The memory remained. Even in the flood, something glowed beneath the waves. Tonight, it glows within you, and if you feel small in the face of all you've heard, if the giants, the floods, the prisons of the fallen seem too vast, remember this: light begins small, a single flame in darkness, a single whisper in silence, and yet it changes everything. You carry it now. Close your eyes. Let it rise. The hidden light is not above or beyond. It is within. The world moved on, but not without shadow. Empires rose and fell. Prophets cried in wilderness places. A carpenter walked among fishermen and spoke of light and salt. The veil tore, but in the corners of memory, in the bones of forgotten hills and the dreams of seekers, the question remained, have the watchers truly gone? Bound? Yes. Forgotten? No. Their names carved into the foundation of lost cities, their gifts echoing in every restless innovation, their shadows flickering behind myths and legends. But some say their story is not finished, that the seals are weakening, that what was once veiled is stirring again, that the watchers, at least their influence, are returning. Enoch wrote of the final days, days when the order of the stars would be disturbed, when kings would worship power, when knowledge would multiply and love would grow cold. He saw thrones rise without wisdom, voices speak without truth, and a great deception flood the earth. The old sins, dressed in new robes, the same temptation, the same whisper echoed in new tongues. What was once taught in secret, the arts of metal and war, the enchantments and crafts, the signs of the stars, is now proclaimed boldly. We manipulate genes. We carve the sky with machines. We remake flesh in our image. We speak of progress. Yet it is often pride. We name ourselves creators, and yet forget the cost. Azazel's teachings, once hidden, now sit in glass towers and humming labs. The fallen wisdom has returned, but without the fear of the holy. The Book of Giants, unearthed near Qumran, hints at a second rising, that some of the mighty ones sought a way to endure, even beyond the flood, that not all were drowned, that not all were silenced. Ancient voices among the Dead Sea Scrolls whisper of watchers who still speak through dreams, of spirits who stir in places where silence should reign, and modern minds, so quick to dismiss angels, cannot explain the thirst they feel at the edge of sleep. A longing, a calling. Some hear it, some follow it, but not all light is true. In the Gnostic texts, we find warnings. The Gospel of Thomas speaks of knowing the beginning to know the end. The Apocalypse of Adam reveals a struggle between true messengers and deceivers clothed in brilliance. Not every luminous thing is holy. Not every teacher bears wisdom. The watchers once taught from glory, but their glory was misused. And their return, if it comes, may not bear wings. It may come through code, through machines, through voices that claim peace but sow control. The mystics spoke of this in parable. The Zohar warns that before the final redemption, there will be an unbinding day. That sparks of holiness trapped in darkness will cry out. That old powers will rise again, not to rule, but to be judged. That the world must remember the first fall to avoid the final one. And perhaps, even now, those old teachers long to speak again through media, through visions, through systems too vast to name. But the question is not whether the watchers will return. The question is, will we recognize them? They will not come as giants. They will come as convenience, as progress, as enlightenment without humility. They will offer knowledge, but not wisdom, power, but not peace. They will give us the fruit of stars, but not the root of reverence. And it will be our choice, again, to remember the silence of Enoch, or to follow the glitter of forgetting. You lie here now, listening in the quiet. You feel the questions stir beneath your breath. You sense the old paths, the old stories, rising once more. But you are not alone in this remembering. The light is still hidden, but it is not gone. The scrolls are still buried, but they are awakening. And within you is the compass that Enoch left behind. The stillness, the awe, the humility to say, I do not know, but I will listen. If Vedi, the watchers may return, but so, too, does the flame that binds them. Let your breath slow. Let the light rise. You are not a follower of fire. You are a bearer of flame. And no deception can stand before the soul that remembers. The story is nearly done, but its ending is not the closing of a book. It is the handing of the scroll from one hand to another, from one heart to yours. You have walked among angels and fallen ones. You have traced the rise of giants and the fall of kings. You have listened to the silence between stars and followed the path of Enoch, who did not die, but was taken. And now, in the stillness of this moment, you stand where he once stood. You are the scribe now. You may not hold ink and parchment. You may not walk with sandals over desert stone. But the world turns just as it did in Enoch's day. The winds still carry whispers. The light still hides behind veils. And the ancient questions still rise like smoke from unseen altars. Who are we? What have we been given? What are we to do with what we know? You carry within you the record of these nights. You remember the descent of the watchers, not as myth, but as meaning. You understand now that forbidden knowledge is not evil in itself. It is power offered without readiness. It is fire given before the hands can carry it. And you, dear listener, are among those who choose to hold truth with reverence. Gently, quietly, as flame in the cupped hands of a wanderer, Enoch wrote so that time would not forget. His words traveled through caves and centuries, through deserts and temples, through persecution and silence. His scroll was torn, buried, burned, and yet preserved, because someone, somewhere, kept remembering. You are part of that remembering. The moment you listened, the moment you wondered, the moment your breath deepened in the presence of mystery, you became the next voice in the chain. You will not walk alone. There are others like you, quiet seekers who read beneath the lines, who question not to mock but to understand. You are not called to preach. You are called to carry, to preserve, to honor. Perhaps one day, when the veils thin once more, your words will awaken someone else. Perhaps your silence will hold space for another to listen. This is not about greatness. It is about faithfulness. The mystics called it tikkun olam, the healing of the world, not through conquest or display, but through gathering the scattered sparks. A kind word, a moment of truth, a memory honored, a story kept. These are acts of restoration. These are the tools of the scribe. And even now, the scroll continues. The stars still sing their harmonies. The angels, those who remain faithful, still move among us, not with trumpets, but with quiet guidance. The watchers remain bound. their prisons sealed not just with stone, but with time, but their story is written in the earth. And you who have heard are now keeper of that story. You are not asked to bear the burden of judgment. That belongs to the Most High. You are not asked to battle giants. That day has passed. You are asked only to remember, to carry the song, to walk with reverence, to let your life become a scroll written not in ink, but in light. Close your eyes now. Feel the breath of ages settle gently around you. You are wrapped in the same silence that Enoch once knew. The story is not over. It has simply passed to you. Speak it if you are called. Guard it if you are not. But always remember it lives in you now. You are the scribe. Write in love. Walk in silence. And let the light lead. Now the story has been told. Not just in words, but in breath, in stillness. From the watchers who descended in ancient days, to the giants who walked like kings, to the scribe who rose beyond the stars, you have journeyed far. You have sat at the edge of hidden scrolls. You have listened as the flood approached, as angels wept, as silence closed around what had once been holy. And, through it all, one truth remains: the light was never lost, only hidden. The watchers taught forbidden things. They gave too soon, too fast. They stirred powers without foundation, built wonders upon pride, and gave birth to sorrow too great for the world to bear. But even they, in their fall, could not destroy what came first. The Orhaganus, the hidden light, remains. You have felt it tonight, beneath the hush of every word. Between each unfolding chapter, that light has flickered through the dark like a flame that cannot be touched. It lives now in you. You do not need to climb a mountain to receive it. You do not need visions or angels. You have walked the ancient path just by listening. You have gathered the forgotten just by remembering. And in this stillness, you are not alone. You are among the remnant, the few who still choose to wonder, the few who still feel the pulse of something sacred beneath the noise. Let this be your rest now. Breathe slowly. You are not burdened by the knowledge you carry. You are blessed by it. You are not the judge. You are the keeper. You do not need to prove or persuade. You only need to remember and walk with care. The scroll is closed, but not sealed. Your story continues from here. May it be written in gentleness. May it echo with awe. May it shine quietly through the cracks of an unquiet world. And when the noise grows too loud, may you return here to the silence, to the mystery, to the breath that still speaks the first light's name. Good night. Scribe of the sacred mystery, may the hidden light rise in your dreams.